Welcome to Canceled. We are back. Sorry for the missing week, but we're back here. I was out of town in New Orleans doing stuff. Somebody forgot to watch the episodes. I was trying to be nice, but she looked at me like I was an asshole, so I just gotta bring it up.
Yeah. No, fair and valid, and I will send a handwritten apology to each of you that writes in on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm Brett VerVoort, and I'm back to talk about these last two episodes.
Last two episodes of John from Cincinnati. I started doing, Googling, what did other people have to say about John from Cincinnati? We were just talking about this off the air. Mm-hmm. There was, the showrunner was on Craig Ferguson, and when he was asked if he knew what the show was about, he said, no, I don't. Motherfucker. I got so mad, because I've been, really kind of putting in some thought, because, this show's, interesting, weird. Oh, you're just throwing shit at a wall. You don't know what this is.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely, a spaghetti, let's see what sticks.
And a lot stuck for me, I guess. I enjoyed.
There were some moments that definitely stood out, but and it's hard to say because the show got canceled after 10 episodes. But it's did they have a sense of where it was going at least, even if they didn't know what it was about? Did they have a goal? They're where's it ending?
I think that's the thing they had the least of is an actual goal or an idea of where it's going. I think they had ideas of what they want to. Big picture ideas of what I want to talk about, kind of a thing.
Yeah, they had themes they wanted to explore.
Exactly.
But it was,
they didn't know how, what the end goal was going to be.
It was definitely a grab bag, when you're coming back from a Halloween trip and you're oh, okay, we got some Snickers, we got some Milky Way, but we definitely got, popcorn balls. that we didn't want in here.
For sure. I'm trying to find the exact quote. Yeah, at one point he says, well, we have mutual friends who speak of a slow unfolding. We're not in any kind of creepy, weird cult or anything. That was the showrunners talk about the show. But his exact line is, you don't know what it's about. And he goes, I don't know what it's about. I don't know the bottom line. Well, motherfucker, shouldn't you know what it's about? And then the rest of it doesn't really,
that's the elevator pitch, right?
Right. Well, the elevator pitch is, I don't know what this is about. That's crazy.
They're we're just going to sign off on anything. But also, I think, the timing of when this came out, just from the things that I read, wasn't ideal. Because when this show came out, people thought he was leaving Deadwood to do this. Right. So there was outrage about that. And then I didn't realize that Sopranos had also just finished. Mm-hmm. And Sopranos had that really unsatisfying ending.
Esoteric ass ending.
Yeah. I didn't watch it. I just remember it was a fade to black. And everyone was just the rest of that week, they were this is garbage.
Yeah, it's not even a fade to black. It's a hard cut to black. It's Don't Stop Believing playing. And then it just stops. The show just stops.
Yeah. And so once Sopranos had that sort of thing, John from Cincinnati did not slow that outrage down.
Yeah. The exact line he says, though, this is the most we could get out of Milch for what this show is about, is, where is it? I just had it. He says, but, this is a quote, but if God were trying to reach out to us, and Ferguson says, right, and he goes, and he felt a certain urgency about it. That's what it's about.
So if God wanted to get in touch with us, what was the quickest way?
And he felt a certain urgency. So the quickest way is to send a person who doesn't know how to actually speak or convey messages to a surfing town in California. That's not appear in the sky and say, I'm God, and here's what I want to say. You're the all-powerful.
No,
you have to send a bunch of esoteric nonsense.
Yeah, there's no Mufasa moment.
Yeah.
Coming through the clouds. I am here.
I mean, I feel like if you're going to say he felt an urgency about it, well, then don't make Mitch Yost float and make me wonder what that means for fucking 10
and have
episodes.
Him disappear for 6 episodes.
What a prick. All right, let's get into this. Let's get into these episodes. We'll come back to big picture stuff.
Episode 8, which I believe...
Episode 9.
Oh, episode 9.
Right, it's 9 and 10, yeah?
Yeah, it's 9, but it's day 8.
Yeah, yes, day 8. Sean's disappeared.
Shawnee's gone.
Which, it feels fucking like a weird choice to do an episode 2 episodes ago where Sean was missing to only follow it up with another episode where Sean's missing. You know what I mean? It seems like you're going to that well.
Put a bell on him.
Yeah, something. Ties like to the bed or something.
Yeah.
But also, we see Mitch again. He's gone down to Mexico.
And he's tracked down this old companion of his named the chemist?
Well, he was the chemist, but his name is Erlenmeyer.
Erlenmeyer.
As in the flask, as in like the beaker that you use in science class, like, because he's a chemist. I found that annoying. I also found it annoying. You're introducing another goddamn character into the show in episode 9. You had to know by now you're getting canceled. And at this point, so like maybe don't. I don't need more. Yeah. You already brought the hair lip in. Now you're bringing in this guy.
Yeah, and this guy lives in apparently a driftwood house on the beach. I don't even think there's running water in there. He's just mysterious. Used to make a lot of acid, I guess.
I'm assuming he makes that good jerk your son off acid that Sissy was on.
Just like Erlenmeyer used to make.
So, and again, I get that this is like, they write fucking in this weird sing-songy, not the way people talk way. Mm-hmm. But he comes up to this chemist and he tells him, hey, I've been up in the air. As if the chemist is going to have any fucking context for what that possibly means. Were you in a hot air balloon? What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. Hey, I floated. It just makes me so mad. That Mitch Yost makes me angry. And then for them to try to, like, kind of redeem him, bothered me as well.
It bothered me as well, and he deserves to get hit in the face repeatedly by Sissy, because he does later in this episode, eventually, him and the chemist decide to come back, because the chemist is like, so you came all the way to Mexico when all this stuff is going on. Why?
Yeah. He even says at one point, I think an extraterrestrial is involved with my family. That's what he says to the chemist. And the chemist, okay, so you came so you came here to get acid? I don't understand.
What is your process?
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he's like, wait, Shawty's gone? And she's like, you haven't been here.
Yeah. This is the second time Shawty's gone. God damn it. He shows up, but they do try to redeem him somewhat by having him go, like, there's a line he says specific where he's like, give me the weight, let me take it or whatever, because he's going to go, like, deal with the press or whatever, right? So he's like, Sissy's yelling at him or whatever, and he's, like, trying to...
Is like you weigh down a hot air balloon? Is it like a metaphor like that? Because he's up in the air?
I hadn't even thought about that.
Give him the weight.
God damn it.
Yeah, if I didn't have responsibilities, I would float too. We all float, buddy.
Yeah. We're all just weighed down by the fucking...
The man.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I hadn't even thought about that until this moment. I'm liking this show less in the retelling of this episode. Zippy is also missing. Which made me real nervous. Initially, when I saw Zippy was gone, and I was like, oh, well, then maybe Sean's not coming back. Only in that moment, because I was like, if Zippy is responsible for him being alive.
Yeah, they both died and then miraculously came back to life. So maybe they're connected in some way.
Right.
And so Sissy is on the rampage. She calls up Shawnee's mom, and it's Link's phone because the mom and Link are sleeping together. And she's like, what do you... Get his dick out of your mouth and find your goddamn son.
Yeah.
Did you take him? Did Link take him?
But also, like, how is she supposed to know? You won't let her around... Sissy's also making me mad. Because, like, you're yelling at this woman for not knowing that her son is missing, as if she could possibly know that because you won't let her around her son because she's a sex worker. And, like... Sissy's becoming unlikable, and it's not just because she jerked off her kid. I'm not saying that doesn't lean into making her unlikable a little bit, but she's becoming unlikable because her reactions are so insanely hurtful at all times.
She became the biggest ball buster that ever was. Like, there'd be people who'd be like, hey, Sissy, let me try and help and find Sean. And they're like, yeah, and why don't you go fuck yourself on the way?
Yeah.
Shoot yourself up with drugs, you fucking asshole.
She tells somebody at one point, I wrote it down, she's like, don't forget to drown yourself afterwards. Okay, what?
They're trying to help you.
And she just can't, and I understand, like, she pushes people away or whatever, and apparently so she doesn't jerk them off, but...
It's really one of the
It's really one of the... She has no other options. She either really loves you or really loves you. There is also another message sent while he's missing, right?
Yes,
another video message.
The hair lip uncovers with his, I guess, girlfriend.
I know.
Their relationship is very confusing.
It's odd because at first I was like, she does that thing where she puts her shirt over his head. Yeah. Because she's like in that way of like, it makes him uncomfortable, and I think that's funny. But now I think there may be a thing.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's weird.
They have a thing with his bald head and her breast that repeats. Anyways, he comes across a new image, and it has two
of the stick figures.
Two of the stick figures. So we think that means that Sean is...
Because one is smaller. They make a lot of jumps in logic where it's like they think that means Sean is okay. Because there's
when
two
I see that,
figures.
it means I'm losing at Hangman. These are just little anthropomorphic figures.
But there's a lot of jumps. At one point, Butchie is like, John can't dump out, I'm not an asshole, therefore Sean's okay.
Yeah, they're putting together all these things about like how John seems relatively harmless, so they don't think that he's dead, but they also have no proof of this.
Right. And they are also under the assumption that John took him, right? That is a leap they're making. John's not there, he's not there, so they have to be together. I kind of get that leap in logic. Except that Sean runs around that fucking town whenever he wants, all the time. No supervision. He just goes wherever he wants, right?
No.
So maybe he just fucking went somewhere. I don't know. It seems weird. But also, we know that not to be the case. He did go somewhere. We'll find out in the next episode. He went up, maybe?
Yes, Cincinnati.
I think he went to Cincinnati. But then he comes back at... We can actually just kind of talk about these two episodes.
They're companions. So
it's fine.
All of episode 9 is basically, Shawnee's gone. What are we going to do? We think he's okay. We don't know if he's okay. But just based on random data, we're going to hope for the best. And also, they started talking to the press briefly.
Right, because Sean's missing.
Because Sean's
missing. They're going to have to eventually go to the press.
And they're like, do you think, they're like, we think he's with this man. He's 6 foot tall, maybe mentally retarded.
Yeah.
But we don't know for sure that he's in danger.
It's such a weird way to go to the press with that information as well, because there's no real information.
And then Bill tried to get his friend, but they haven't filed a missing persons report.
Right.
So they went to the press before they filed a missing persons report, which I think is interesting.
For sure. Also, there's a couple other things that happen. The doctor's getting a little more involved as well, with particularly the Barry, who runs the hotel. By the way, that actor, Stan Winston's son. Found that out in my doings. Matt Winston is his name. Stan Winston of like special effects fame. Anyway, he goes and gets one of the Avon catalogs from the Hispanic lady that they ran into previously, and it's filled with those fucking symbols.
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of those stick figures drawn in.
I love there was like some line, it's just like the artistry behind finding lipsticks for women of color.
I wrote it down, whereas the care that must go into creating lipstick shades for women of color is what Barry says when he handed the fucking Avon catalog.
That's beautiful. That should be a t-shirt.
We see him go back into the bar again.
And he sees the figure of, I assume, the man that molested him. Sure. And then also we see Sean from behind.
So I was like, that's not good either. There's a lot of things that made me lean into, Sean's not coming back.
Yeah.
One of which is he's a ghost in this fucking bar. Secondly, one thing that I did figure out while watching this episode, that bar is 100% supposed to be on the grounds of the hotel. Because he walks in a door from the outside of the hotel and walks into that bar. Now that I know that also makes me angry. That bar doesn't exist in that hotel. But anyway.
Yeah. It had a pool table. It's pretty decked out.
It's pretty big. It's a spacious bar.
Yeah.
Sissy trashes Mitch's a
clubhouse,
little clubhouse or whatever in the previous episode. Mitch comes back and he's like, "Oh, neighborhood punks must have done this." Think for 2 seconds who your wife is. Maybe just think for a second.
Get back in the game, dude. Oh, also there was like a cute moment where Freddy's friend
Palaka gives him this teddy bear.
Yeah,
it's my favorite moment in this episode.
He's like, a gift that you don't give is cursed until you give it. Yeah. And so a lot of bad stuff's been happening. You broke my hand. Shawnee's missing. So here, take this gift. And it's a little teddy bear with sunglasses and a leather jacket.
Little tough guy teddy bear. And what I really enjoyed in this moment is he gives it to Freddy, and Freddy's like, fuck this, and throws it out. He's like, here's my thing, bear, or whatever. And he throws it into the parking lot. And Palaka goes right back out and gets it, and he's like, no, I gave you, hurt by him doing that, and it's like the first time he kind of stands up for himself.
Yeah.
Palaka does like, no, you're gonna take this bear. I gave it to you. Stop being a dick.
Yeah, he's like, do it for the kid.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and then takes it all the way over to Barry, and he's like, for the kid.
Yeah. And then he gets mad because he doesn't want his bear hanging out with Barry's bear at one point. After
this
the next
tough
episode.
bear in a
But
jacket.
also Freddy in that moment, he like there's a moment there that I enjoyed where he gets the bear initially before he gives it to Barry, and like he has this moment where he sees he's hurt Palaka. It's not necessarily what he meant to do, right? But so he kind of takes the bear and has that like soft moment. But then in order to like be like, oh, I'm still Freddy, he has to like angrily zip up the bear's jacket and make it look tough. He's like, damn, there you go. Now it's a bear.
That's a bear.
That made me laugh.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think if there was anything else.
There's not a ton.
Luis Guzman grills.
Luis Guzman grills for sure. He has to get some food. She's going around town trying to get people to help look for him. One of those groups is Vietnam Joe, and the other guys at the VFW for some reason. So just these old drunks around the town looking for a
Yeah,
boy.
and it's really just like them in front of a grocery store being like, ma'am, have you seen this kid?
Yeah.
And I was just like, VFW at work, buddy.
Super weird. I also wrote down this line that I don't know why. I wrote, stinkweed is tied into the FBI. I don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah. There was like a part where like he was trying to get Mark Paul Gosselaar's character involved, and so they were trying to think of what their like detective connections were, and they were like, we low-key have a connection at the FBI.
That was weird. They also have a private eye who made so-and-so's date rape go away.
Yeah.
Ugh, gross.
I know. Man, Stinkweed did 9/11.
Yeah, I think there's a chance.
They might.
Also, those two stick figures, two towers. Apparently, this show was just an examination of 9/11 as well.
According to a Medium article I read this morning.
Meyer Dickstein shows up again in this episode, the lawyer, because he's going to write a message back
to the people
he thinks, whoever's posting the images of the stick figures. Whoever's sending that message, he's going to send them a message back.
And he had a dream that he was supposed to like be at the cafe with the hair lip and the waitress.
So he does write a message.
And it is responded to.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the response said.
I think the response was all of the little figures.
It gets another tarp with like a ton of little figures.
A ton of little figures on it.
Yeah.
And then they also, in the next episode, notice that those stick figures are also in the bar above, like, I guess one of the beams that supports the top of the bar. And they're like, oh, I just never noticed that. Weird.
Also, I think they also see that one of them drew, I don't remember if it was the lawyer or whoever drew it in the cement, where they make the shuffleboard court. They see that as well. So the episode ends with, there's a couple more great sissy moments where Mitch goes, I went up in the air, and she goes, well, why couldn't you go off a cliff? That's a classic. And then Butchie says, I'm going out on the water, and she says, why don't you try to find time to go fuck yourself on the way? What? Why? I don't understand. So he's going to go surf. And then, Freddy has a line where he says, whoever I ran away from in that volcano 25 years ago, I'm talking to you. So I guess he hadn't run in with God in that volcano, supposedly.
Yeah.
The music cue at the end of this episode, the last song is Hold On, I'm Coming.
Yeah.
Which is like a little on the nose.
A little on the nose.
Yeah.
And because they knew the show was over and because they had to cram it all in, next episode, guess who's back, baby?
Yeah. It opens with Shawnee coming back out. Him and John
matching
wetsuits are coming back in from the water.
Yeah.
Right? They just like Butchie and Kai are asleep on the beach. They wake up and there's Sean and John coming in out of the water. I don't understand. What I also didn't like in that moment is Butchie is looking out at them. Like, you can kind of make out two bodies, kind of.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, Sean's back. How do you... What?
I know my son's silhouette anywhere.
Yeah, that was just strange.
Years of heroin.
But then also, like, this shit's getting real weird. Hairlip and the other one are watching that scene unfold on the computer in the cafe.
Yeah, like for whatever reason, the computer was on. No one had turned it on. He said that he turned it off the day before.
Yeah. And she had left him to lock up.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's a live feed that is connected to Cass's camera somehow. So whatever she is shooting on the camera is what they're able to see.
Okay, I don't know that technology exists in 2007.
Oh, it did. It definitely did not, which is why it must be God.
Mm-hmm. Only option. John is super attached to, or Sean is super attached to John now. He just kind of wants to hang out with John at all times.
Yeah, and they're like, we're just trying to make sure you're not brainwashed, buddy. He's like, no, I just want to live with you and John now, Dad.
Yeah, I just want to live in this drug squat with this weird guy who doesn't shit. Whatever, Sean, it's fine. Because he went up to Cincinnati, which we later on, there's a lot of conversation of like, do you know where you went? He's like, oh, kind of went up, I guess. Like, there's got a lot more of John's like, what's he say? Like, if my words are yours, can you hear my Father?
Yeah, more of his prophecy speak.
Yeah.
And during this whole unfolding, there's a moment where John really starts to talk to Link, which almost made me mad just because I was like, of all the people to figure it out, it's going to be Link.
It's going to be this shitty businessman guy.
This shitty businessman is like, let me hear you out, John.
But also, he's the only one who like just kind of sits down to, and like Bill did previously, had to sit down to question him, but every time he would respond, he would just go, you fucking asshole, like he wouldn't like try to understand what he was saying. Link is like the first person to actually have a moment to go, okay, you said that, well let me respond to that and see what you say back and see if I can kind of like understand what you're saying, which I don't know why it's taken 10 episodes for someone to do that.
Yeah. And so one of the decisions that gets made in this, which is, I guess, pretty major, is that the whole family is going to be sort of brought into the Stinkweed brand, and they're going to spin this whole, like, Shawnee was missing, now he's not, now there's this guy John narrative into launching Stinkweed again.
Into launching Sean, because Sean is going to be separate from Stinkweed? No, it's still Stinkweed, but they're going to use that weird symbol as their logo.
They have a new logo, and then Paul Gosselaar's taking over because he sold the company anyway.
Right.
But they're kind of pitching it like,
but also part of it is to like just cover up the supernaturalness of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Because at this point, Mitch is just permanently floating, right?
Yeah.
They have to hold him down so he's not just in the air.
Yeah.
So like, they're going to use all of this as partially as a distraction, partially to relaunch Stinkweed, partially to launch Sean's
and just like,
career.
as long as, I guess, whatever's going on is going on, they'll keep spinning it as like, oh, maybe we sent him to a training place or whatever. They can always spin it.
Yeah. Also, so a lot of that conversation that Link has with John is that like weird, like nonsense speak, but he is actually responding to questions. So like at one point he goes, Link says, does your father have a father? What's your father's name? And he goes, my father's name is Father. And he's like, do you know your father's words? He says, I know my father's father's. I don't know my father's father. I know my father's words. And he says, well, what does your father's father say? He says, listen to your father. So, like, it doesn't make sense, but he is having an actual conversation that responds to questions. Does that make... I know...
Yeah, it's like a weird logic, but there is intelligence underneath it all.
Sean says he wants to move in with John and Butchie, and when he tells Sissy, of course she fucking loses her mind. She's like, what do you mean? We did such a horrible job. Excuse me, sorry about that. We did such a horrible job or whatever. No, maybe he just doesn't want to live in this horrifically toxic environment.
Yeah, maybe he's tired of your tuna fish sandwiches.
The only thing you feed this man is tuna fish. He's gonna get mercury poisoning. But also, like, it's just a house full of your nonstop bitching and screaming and insults. You're nice to him, I guess, but like, you and Mitch are a fucking nightmare in this house. You yell at every person that walks in the door. I wouldn't want to live there either. I don't know that live in a drug squat. At least wait
till he's like too old for you to jerk him off anymore.
I did laugh when Mitch is floating for real and everyone can see it. He Sissy walks in and Mitch is floating and she just goes, "Get down here."
Yeah.
That made me laugh. The first person to just be like, "All right, knock that shit off."
Yeah.
It made me laugh.
Also, was it Dixon's character, the lawyer character, got a great blowjob from his wife.
Oh, yeah. Meyer Dickstein did wake up getting his dick sucked for no reason.
For no reason. He seemed puzzled by it as well.
He seemed a little put off, honestly.
He was confused face that he lifts it up and I guess it's his wife and then he's like,
well, the fiance or whatever.
Fiance, then he puts it back down. Still dubious.
9/11/14 is a motif. It's a date that something's getting launched. 9/11/14 are the numbers on the shuffleboard court. I guess maybe that's more 9/11 shit or whatever.
Yeah.
Sean's having they're asking Sean questions about where he's been, right? And he doesn't really have answers.
Yeah, but I think, at least from a showrunner perspective, they could have said something and it would have been controversial, right? Because it's well, you don't know. So I guess, being ambiguous about it might have been a deliberate choice.
No, I think it was for sure a deliberate choice. And one, I'm not necessarily mad at. It's just a lot of, the waves were good. Were the waves on the water? I don't know. This shit like that. Which is fine. Also, Sissy continues to not give a shit about Mitch's floating, and I just really enjoyed the whole episode. He's just stuck in a corner of the ceiling, and she's just doing errands around him. That I find very funny. I don't know why, but the idea of just no selling your husband's floating, I just find very funny. They're gonna put on a parade.
Yeah. To
launch Sean and relaunch Stinkweed.
Yeah.
They're going to use that symbol as the logo for the whatever. So they're going to get a new wetsuits made with that logo on it or whatever. But now so they're going to do this fucking parade and they've got I don't know. It's just a weird ending to this. I don't even really understand what happened.
Yeah, then there was just shots of people and John's voice over the top saying more prophecy speak.
What was up with the dude selling the El Camino?
It seemed like he knew more
he knew John and kind of knew something going on there, it felt like.
Yeah, where there was definitely a relationship there, but it's one of those things where that character probably had a longer arc and they just cut it for time. But yeah, I could definitely see him being the same way that the chemist was added second to last episode. It's just this character definitely had more going on because he was speaking the same way John was speaking.
Yeah. So they go to get an El Camino for the parade because John's we have to have an El Camino. And this place on 8th Street has an El Camino. And they try to big dick the guy selling the cars by being we have 18 cars or whatever. And he's I got 18 dealerships in this fucking city alone. Never mentioned blah, 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 whatever. But then he does start talking in John speak of fathers and blah, blah. It was just I was oh, this guy is going to mean something. No, we're halfway into the fucking last episode. This guy doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Also, Freddy's competition from the island shows up.
Yeah.
And that was also weird. So there's a young Hawaiian guy, right, who isn't his direct competition, but maybe works for his direct competition. I think the older Asian dude that guy sees in the car is kind of Freddy's main whatever.
I think he has the young Hawaiian guy has a relationship with Freddy.
They clearly go back.
Yeah, came up with Freddy and stuff like that. And he's oh, it's just me here. He's no, because y'all never come alone. So I know he's here. Just tell him I'm not a threat or whatever. And then
yeah, and basically I'll take he's the whole previous to him showing up, he knows he's coming, and he's telling Palaka Freddy's telling Palaka, I have to I can't just go I'm leaving. You can take everything because then he's gonna think that I'm setting him up. So I gotta ask for something, but I can't ask for too much. So he tells him tell the captain I'll take a taste for 3 years, but that's all I want. He says something tell the Chinaman Freddy's got 17 safety deposit boxes. I'll take a taste for 3 years, but all I want is out. But he tells the guy if I were you, I would try to take over from the Chinaman. He's trying to set the young guy against the Chinaman.
Yeah.
And again, I think they might have factored in more had this show continued because it's like he was kind of staying. But they also do that thing where like they're trying to lean into the Hawaiian-ness. So they're just using like Hawaiian slang that I don't know.
As soon as he gets in the car with the Chinaman, they like code switch. And then it's just like, don't act Lolo. And
he says, I might be a papuli, but I ain't no Lolo, he says at one point. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah.
They do that character's name is Moana, by the way, which I enjoy because I really enjoy the movie Moana. They give them a lot of story time in the. You're making the last episode, so I don't understand the choice of factoring them in. At this point, this is the last episode. So why are we introducing them and giving them like a 3-minute scene in the car together just to them?
I think it was just because like Freddie had mentioned previously that like someone was going to be coming probably from the island, and so they felt like they had to wrap up that through line, but they honestly really didn't.
They for sure didn't. Couldn't care less about that through line. Certainly not to the point of, like I said, the Chinaman and Moana have like a 3-minute scene in that car together. Mm-hmm. I don't care about any of that. It doesn't. Yeah. It means nothing to me. There's a man floating and an alien / God, and I don't know. I don't care about weird drug business in Hawaii. That doesn't factor into my life.
And I'm happy that Cass was chosen for this, but other than that, I think she knows nothing about filmmaking. I think she just happened to be there to have a camera.
Yeah, I kind of think she just has a camera.
She just has a camera. It could have been literally anyone, but it just happens to be Cass. And she's like, this is my process. And she's like messing with Palaka.
So this is where this episode kind of goes off the rails for me a little bit. They're going to have this whatchamacallit, this parade, right? And Bill is trying to run interference with the cops because technically they don't have a license for the parade. They have like a license for a gathering at the beach or whatever. But they work all that out through just Bill yelling at people.
Ooh, yes. Please, more logistics in your finale.
And they start trying, for sure, I don't need to know about the paperwork at all. But it's asked multiple times, like even before the parade, Bill's like, so what's the deal with you have permits or whatever? I'm like, I don't care. Just go have this fucking parade. But they start to kind of bring in other stuff, right? So they bring in the guys who stabbed John at one point. They see him. They call back the scumbag guy who tells Sean's mom that he jerks off to her or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
By literally just having him go, hey, I'm the guy that jerks off to your tapes. He just says that line to her.
And then everybody shit talks.
Everybody's like, shut the fuck up, you pervert. Even Sissy's like, like sticks up for her a little bit. So that happens. You perv dick mouthful, he says. Bill calls the chemist who's now involved a drug tragedy, which I enjoyed. And then there's this montage. So Link is like, we're going to kind of sums up the show. There was this tragedy. I've signed this kid. We're going to relaunch the, Butchie Yost failed and we failed him. And we're going to relaunch the Yost dynasty or whatever. And they start to discuss things that were clearly going to happen in future episodes that just they're like, oh, we're just going to throw out these ideas that we were going to do. One of which was the doctor comes back 25 years younger. Did you catch that moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just a kid talking to some nurse lady. And I was like, who's she? It's such a weird, I get you had all these ideas and you didn't get a chance to do them, but don't just dump them at the end of this episode.
Popcorn balls.
Popcorn balls. So weird.
In my Milky Way.
And then, so there's this long ass, not long, but there's this whole scene at the beach, right?
Yeah.
And then it cuts to this montage, and this happens to this character, so and so does this. The chemist is back.
Yeah.
Barry opens the bar. It's kind of telling what would have happened if the show continued, and music and whatnot. Cuddy montage. And then we just get a Bill monologue?
Then you get a Bill monologue going up the stairs.
He finally goes up the stairs.
To see the room where his wife died. And he has this, heartfelt thing about, how I wish you could have been there for this and been there for that.
And, I've kind of put my life on hold in some respect. I hadn't left the house until the thing with the kid. But, I love you and I'm going to live my life. I wrote down here, if this show had made more sense, Ed O'Neill would have gotten an Emmy because he is tremendous. And this monologue is very touching and heartfelt. but it feels so tacked on coming after what was clearly the end of the show, right?
Yeah.
It's out of nowhere, and then Zippy flies in to the window.
And he's like,
oh, Zippy's back. Credits. And that's just how this
that's the end of the show.
It's so weird. And, like, that scene, I loved. I actually thought that was one of his better monologues, and I think all of his monologues are actually very good. But, like, it is the tacked on of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was like a super hard cut from that montage, and it just, like, it felt super forced, but I guess needs must. It
didn't feel forced to me in the delivery or anything.
in just the editing placement of it.
Yeah. It just didn't feel... It could have just been before the parade.
Before.
It would have made more sense before the parade. Him talking about, I'm going to live my life, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then he goes off to this parade.
And with the montage.
Yeah.
Makes more sense.
With the montage. The clear ending of this show. I don't know. That kind of annoyed me.
Yeah, it felt like... Yeah.
I felt like I was really enjoying this show, and it might just be a factor of... They got canceled early, so they never had a chance to explain. Like, when I finished watching the 10th episode, I was like, that sucks. This show clearly had some ideas it was exploring, got ended early, didn't have a chance to get where it was going, and if it had, it could have been really good.
Yeah.
But then I come to find out, they didn't fucking have an idea where they were going. He didn't know what the goddamn show was about.
I mean, it's like Twin Peaks, I would compare to this show, like, tonally, just because the language is very elevated, the characters are very...
And there's, like weird esotericness.
It's weird esotericness, but Twin Peaks at least had 2 seasons to confuse the hell out of us, but also delight us.
Sure.
And because this one only had 10 episodes, I wonder if, like, more of the lore would have come out of it, because I could see where this show could have been like a cult hit, you know?
Sure, absolutely.
It has that sort of like nicheness to it.
It sure does. I think it's safe to say at this point, it's God.
Yeah.
Right? It's clearly God. Mm-hmm. Even if you take away the interview where he was like, what if God wants to talk to us? It's a man, he's talking about his father. It's clearly God, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in any of that nonsense. That was harsh. Probably shouldn't just call it nonsense like that. But I don't. It's not for me. They made it somewhat... They didn't make religion appealing, but they were like... I was able to watch a religious-based show and not get like, oh, they're fucking heavy-handed with the godness. You know what I mean?
Not too preachy.
Yeah, it wasn't... I don't think it was preachy at all.
It's not like God friended me on CBS.
By the way,
if he had something really urgent to say,
he would have friended me.
He would have friended you.
He would have slid in my DMs is what God would have done. Did you watch that show? I for sure didn't.
I for sure didn't, because I just remember seeing the trailer being like, what?
Yeah. I saw I didn't even see the trailer. I saw the fucking title, and I was like, we're not doing that CBS. Also, I'm sure it's on CBS. That's just a guess. It was around the time like that. There's a young black kid who becomes the mayor or whatever. There was like a weird run of CBS shows where I think they were trying to like branch out into like, I don't know,
They're trying to get that Blackish money.
A little bit, but they were also, I think, trying to do like single camera. They're trying to branch away from the sort of Big Bang Theory.
The
Everybody
format,
Loves Raymond thing that they
stuff.
are used to. Mm-hmm. And it was not successful. I don't think either of those shows are still on. So I got to see this Medium article. John from Cincinnati is a 9/11 truth show, is what the title of this Medium article is. Did you gather anything? Were there any examples of why that is?
I think it was like more. It was one. Whenever people watch shows very closely and they're picking up all this sort of periphery stuff. So there were posters and scenes that had like examine 9/11, the truth about 9/11. And so when John keeps talking about the towel heads needing to be eradicated, it's not specifically about Muslim people, but also don't use the slur towel heads if you don't mean...
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, and I think it was about bringing the people responsible to light, and then how it was like tragic and we all suffered PTSD as a nation, and how this show kind of examines like the PTSD of this family and their personal tragedy, and also preventing 9/11-14, which is something that would have been built on in a later season.
Yeah. I kind of think a lot of that's horseshit.
Yeah.
And it could be, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's just one of those things like, you're gonna... It's like the Bible. You're gonna
you're
gonna pull from it
how
what you want.
Interpret it how you want. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely post 9/11 shit happening, and that but it's also pretty far removed from 9/11. This 2007 the show is, right?
2007. But
I'm not crazy. 9/11 is 2001.
It is 2001.
Okay. So yeah, 6 years later seems like a weird time. Like, it's too far to be a direct response to it, and not far enough to be like a revisitation, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just one of those big iconic events that, especially then, because it was only 6 years, would still be pretty fresh in people's memory as a national tragedy.
I guess.
Especially if you're someone who's watching an esoteric TV show on HBO. Sure. You're like, yeah, that was bad.
Would you recommend people watch this show?
No.
Okay, interesting. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, TV recommendations or book recommendations, it depends on the person.
Of course.
But for the most part...
yeah, I guess the question is, do you think this is a worthwhile way to spend 10 hours?
I personally don't, just because it never really took off for me. Mm-hmm. I think the characters were more reactive to stuff that was happening than making active choices or living their own life. There was so much divine intervention in their lives that I never saw any of these characters have to make a choice.
I agree with that 100%. I think that is the biggest flaw of this show is I like what I was going to say. The reason I think it's worth a watch, provided you go in knowing you're going to be ultimately disappointed because it's going to get canceled and nothing's going to be explained.
I've gone into relationships that way.
Sure, absolutely. This is good. This is a mistake, but it's going to be fun for a little while.
Yeah.
I think its biggest strength is also its biggest problem, which is I thoroughly enjoy the weirdness and the almost Lostian sense of what's happening, where's this going, oh, what's that guy's bit in the story. The mystery of it I enjoy, but it is also why it's not a better show, because none of these characters ultimately grow or become better or worse. None of these characters have real arcs.
No.
Butchie starts the show off as a drug addict. He's currently not a drug addict, but only because a magic makes him not be addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
He repeatedly wants to do drugs. He does it multiple times. So he didn't grow. He just, magic happened to him and now he's no longer a drug. Any change that happens to people happens because of some magic and not because of the work they've put in or their relationships to other people. So ultimately, all of the magic weirdness that I like makes this show disappointing in a way.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. If there is a God character and he is intervening in these people's lives, is free will real?
Right.
Or is it just divine providence that we're making the decisions that we're making? Which is a very philosophical, esoteric question. But for this one, where it's so active and so present, it's are these people that I want to get to know, that I want to spend time with, or are they just vehicles for God?
Yeah, nobody's particularly likable in this show, other than I think Luis Guzman is likable.
Yes, but also underutilized.
Wildly underutilized. They're just the weird Greek chorus, those three guys, right?
I know.
Until kind of the end. But those three guys are likable. But none of the Yosts are likable. Butchie was fine until he became a weird racist out of nowhere. Palaka's likable, but ultimately a bad guy. Both Palaka and Freddy are likable, but also ultimately capable of violence and criminals.
Shawnee can surf, and juggle.
Yeah, apparently he can juggle pretty well. But yeah, he doesn't add anything. The doctor, I guess, is fine.
The doctor's fine, but he's also going to become a baby.
Bill's likable. Bill's the best. Bill's the best character. They should make a spinoff that's just about Bill.
Bill and his birds.
I would watch Bill and his birds. Also, when Zippy leaves, we didn't mention this, he starts talking to another bird, talking to Zippy through another bird. Because when things die or disappear in Bill's life, he can still communicate with them through another bird. Because the bird he's talking to, he says, hasn't, not so much as a peep these previous 15 years or whatever he said to that bird. So, I like that whenever something goes bad, he can still, oh, my wife's died, my bird disappeared. He can still talk to him. He just, as long as he has another bird.
Yeah, telepathic conduit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a moment in episode 9 where he's in the car with Freddy, and Freddy's like, "Oh, bring that fucking bird to the car." And he's like, "So I'm supposed to not have telepathic messages from the divine because you can't bear the chirping?"
Yeah. That was actually pretty great. I forgot about that moment, but that was pretty great.
Yeah, and you're like, "Yeah, well, fair."
Yeah. Good point, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a big Twin Peaks fan, so I like weird. I like some of the tonal things that this was trying to do. I just feel like it didn't pull off more than it did pull off.
For sure. I think it was mostly surface.
Yeah,
and
surfing.
And I think ultimately, I'm jokingly angry about the showrunner admitting he didn't know what the show is about. But I think ultimately that's his biggest problem. He has a bunch of interesting ideas, but he has no end line, so he has nowhere to push these ideas. He's just throwing out a bunch of weird ideas. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be cool if this happened? But to what end? You know what I mean?
It's like, what's the difference between a Jackson Pollock painting and what your kindergartner does? Intent.
Right.
100% intent.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, you wouldn't recommend it. I kind of give it a half recommend. Go knowing in it's a sloppy mess, but I don't know. I enjoyed myself watching it for those 10 episodes. So maybe watch it, maybe don't. I don't know.
Live your life.
What do you have to plug? This will be out on Thursday.
This will be out on Thursday. I am doing Critical Hit, which is a Dungeons and Dragons style comedy show. I've never played the game, so that should be a wild ride at Spider House on the 27th.
Awesome. You should definitely check that out. I am headlining the Velveeta Room this coming weekend, 20th and 21st. So I think it's 2 shows Friday, 1 show Saturday because of Pecan Street. So come out to that, buy your tickets early because we're already selling them. First Wednesday of the month is the Sting. Go online, check my dates at chriscubiscomedy.com or at chriscubis on all social media. Next show, I don't know what to do. I kind of want to go back to the 90s.
Ooh, fun throwback.
Pick a throwback maybe. I kind of like doing the HBO thing because at least there's, even if it's bad, it's like competent bad.
Yeah, good quality.
Would people watch Luck? Even knowing all the horse murder?
Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah, because I feel like it's probably pretty good. Except that they killed a bunch of horses making it, so they had to cancel the show. Would you watch Luck? Let me know on Twitter if you would watch Luck, knowing about all the dead horses. Also, if you have a 90s throwback idea for a show, shoot me a tweet at Chris Cubis or at CanceledPod, and we will make an announcement sometime this week before the next episode, so you know what to watch. And we will see you next week.